Sandra.
Carrie.
Who are we?
I get to do it today? The Screaming Divas! I'm in my dressing room.
I'm just gonna leave that there. I love you. Screaming Divas, people.
Oh, and I only had a Diet Coke today.
I know. All right, who do we interview? Oh my goodness.
We have someone really interesting that we want to introduce to all of our viewers, listeners. Yay, Perryn Leech, the new general director
of the COC, people, Canadian Opera Company, a house we both love so much.
Carrie has actually sung there more than me.
Holy moly, how is that possible? I don't know if I believe that, but okay.
But
Perryn Leech, people.
Still stuck in Houston. He is the outgoing managing director of Houston Grand Opera and the new general director of the Canadian Opera Company.
We are all really super excited to see what he's going to do with this beloved company. He's got some really wonderful ideas. I love where he's coming from with the future of opera. And we talked so much about that in this interview, that this is really another one. I know we say this a lot, but truly this is not another one to miss. I love what he stands for with diversity and the future of the opera business, the inclusivity of not only his own company, but all of the companies in Canada, because his vision is that we cannot do this alone. We need to do this together. Brilliant.
It's a village, right? And
village.
Why should we not embrace each of these arts organizations instead of being exclusive? Let's be inclusive. And wow, bravo to him.
Yep.
And also bravo to him for accepting a new job like this in the middle of a pandemic.
Craziness. But we're grateful he did. So excited.
Yep. Check out the clip and can't wait to meet him in person when we are all back in theaters soon.
Hopefully. Get vaccinated, people. Get the shot. Work it out.
Just do it.
Just do it. Stay safe.
Listen, I don't claim to know everything, and I'm certainly not a musicologist in the way that an Alexander or an Anthony is. But what I do know is how to put shows on, and I do know how to create an environment in which we can do really good work. Okay. And I understand the business side of it. Entrepreneurial wise, I'm not. I don't ever accept we don't do that in opera. Well, then you're a Muppet. If you don't continue to evolve, you're a Muppet. Yeah.
Hello.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing great.
This is for you.
My two options.
Cheers. All right. So you like Diet Coke, not Coke Zero?
I shouldn't drink either of them, but there you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Whatever. Mm-hmm. You gotta do what you gotta do.
You can't get Diet Coke here in Paris, so I have to go with Coke Zero.
Coca Light.
Coca Light.
Coca Light.
With no ice. Never with ice.
Oh, they look at you.
Well, you ask for ice and they give you one cube.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. You don't know my fridge drama that I've gone through for the last 2 months here in Paris, but gin tonic without ice.
Yeah, forget it.
Rude.
Yeah, I didn't have a fridge for 2 months. Cheers.
Yikes. Wow.
Hello, we have not met.
This is Carrie.
I'm Perryn.
Hi, nice to meet you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for being on our show.
Yes. For the insanity.
Well, yeah. So I'd watched the one with the HBO studio artists and stuff. I hadn't realized just how many amazing people you've had on. So I now feel like I'm under pressure because you've had like the creme de la creme on.
Mic drop. Yes. Thank you.
I'm like, oh, come on. And Carrie's like, yep, thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, come on. You were right up there with all of them. And you have so much to share with our audience. And that's why we really wanted you on the show to introduce you and your new position.
especially with a company that we both, it's a special place in both of our hearts. We work there so much. We love it there. It's a family.
Yeah, totally. No, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
But you're leaving one family that you've been with for a really long time to go to a new one. And we are really excited to talk to you about that. So again, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. I haven't told my family yet that I'm leaving them here, but oh, you mean Houston Grand Opera? Sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
Best comment we've had ever.
Thank you.
No, let's talk about the last year, 6 months of your life. A lot has happened.
Yeah, a huge amount. I mean, listen, the performing arts has been hit over the last year in its own way. And I mean, if you'd said a year ago, and we're really kind of at the 1 year anniversary right now. If you'd said a year ago that I would have left HEO, moved to got the job in Canada, not moved to Canada, having never visited, since the interview process started. I mean, I've been to CSC several times, but since the interview process started, I've met none of the board physically. I've met like maybe 2 or 3 of the staff over a long period of time. And that's the way it's done in pandemic times. But it's I would never have believed any of that was possible, but it is, and the opportunity came, and I'm utterly thrilled to be joining the CSC family. It's going to be great.
I love what a gigantic thing to do during the pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, it was a gigantic thing to move. I mean, listen, we've done family moves. So we moved from London to Wales when I became technical director in Welsh National, and that may not. I mean, it's 70 miles. In American terms, you're like, that's our next door village. Right. But in real terms, that was a big move from the metropolis of London, where I spent most of my life, down to Wales. And then Anthony went to Houston and said, come over. And I said, no for about 6 months, and then eventually did come over to Houston. And, our kids have grown up here, and one of them's in college in Houston and one of them's in college on the West Coast. And we weren't, none of this is planned. I mean, as singers, you think to yourself, here's my career path, and I'll be doing this. It doesn't work that way. No. You have to be open to just whatever comes up, and do the best you can in that job. And hopefully someone recognizes that and says, oh, they're quite bright, they could maybe do something. And, you carry on. So no, it is another huge move, but, it's the right time. And there've been other opportunities in my time in Houston that just didn't work out with schools and kids, and life gets in the way of so many things. Right. Or not gets in the way, but shapes sort of decisions and things. But sure. No, it's, again, make it the most awkward time you possibly can, and then do it then. Why not?
Isn't that always the way it is?
The good news is that the Queen is on all of our Canadian money, so you're going to feel a little bit more like you're back in England.
But shouldn't it be Meghan Markle?
You know what? I really think it should be. Come on, people.
Or Oprah.
Or Oprah. I agree with that 100%.
One of the two. I mean, that would be a big change up. Yeah.
Okay. You do not have to answer this, but are your kids happy or not happy about Canada?
I think that each day is different. I mean, the twins are 20, so each day is slightly different. So Kirsty got into some very good schools up in the Northwest. We won't name them, but good schools up in the Northwest. Nice. But chose to stay at Rice. Chose to go to school at Rice University in Houston, which is an amazing school. I mean, like a really amazing school. Yes. Because her eldest sister, Gemma, is a wheelchair user and lives with us. So they've never really been separated for very long in their lives. Oh. So she kind of had that pull, and Kirsty's definitely gone to school at Rice. She lived on campus, and she lives in an apartment now and stuff. But it's nice for her to be able to come back and forth. Sure. Rory, he's gone to the West Coast. He's training to be an actor. So we'll see. We'll see if that's where he ends up, or whether he ends up behind the camera or whatever. But Houston wasn't going to be his base anyway. Right. So anytime you've grown up in a house for a long period of time, it becomes your home, and in some ways. But they're kind of they're origin wise, they were born in London. They grew up their early years in Wales. Then we came here. So the majority of their mature life has been in Houston. But I think Toronto is such an amazing city that and we visited as a family, so they know the city. So no, I think it can be, on any given day, as with any child, they can be like, this is the greatest thing ever, what a great adventure, or I will never speak to you again because you slighted me in some way with your eyebrow. It can go either way.
Yep. I agree.
Well, for your son, it is really the mecca of film now.
Yeah, absolutely. But Toronto has such an amazing film community as well.
Yes.
And I certainly hadn't realized just how big Toronto was. So it's basically now, as I understand it, LA is still number one. Atlanta obviously is number two because they spent so much tax dollars on making that an attractive proposition, and then Toronto's number three. So it's actually a good move from that point of view.
Yeah, that's cool.
So we'll see.
And you're still stuck in Houston. You cannot get into Canada. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. So the immigration is really backed up anyway, and obviously Canada's done a much better job of clamping down and not letting the virus run rampant.
Right.
But, we're in Texas, so we just shoot guns into the air and hopefully kill the virus.
Well, you don't have to wear a mask now, right?
Yeah, it's all gone. I mean, the virus. When that mandate came out from the governor, everyone was like, "Oh, it's gone then. That's great." Yeah. I'm going to take my science stuff from scientists, not from politicians.
Thank you. I live in Tennessee, so they haven't completely done away with the mask yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention, you and I had a conversation recently, and I think you're the only person I know that didn't gain weight during the pandemic. In fact.
So let's 50 pounds. Yeah. So this was basic. Yeah, but Kerry, that just shows what a fat bastard I was before. So the reality of it is that I've always been someone. So the Brits have a lot of different ways of talking about being overweight. So it's never said, "Oh, you're really fat," but the things like, "Oh, hey, big man, how are you?" And
yes.
I've been part of my life the entire time, and they have like really, really fun ones like, "He's a big unit." Okay, that what does that mean? Or he never says no to seconds is another one of my favorites. Perryn, he never says no to seconds.
My husband calls himself a fat fuck. My husband's British.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So the self-depreciation plus everything else mean, and the dry sense of humor and all those things. So there's a lot of things. Anyway, the long and short of it was I had got very big. I toured for a long time with an opera company, and my justification at that point was I was fueling because I was so physically active, and I was, but I was putting fuel into the petrol tank. Anyway, I then went to wasn't touring, and the weight went on. And then I gained my baby weight and never got rid of that, as I had children and stuff. So anyway, all the long and short of it, I got very big before I came to Houston. And so I lost a whole lot of weight when I came to Houston, which again, I'm fiercely competitive. So coming to Texas and being told you'll definitely put weight on in Texas, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go the other way. So my first big weight loss journey, and I'll come back to that in a second. My first weight loss journey, I went down. My biggest, I got to 328 pounds.
Okay.
And I got down to 210.
Nice.
Over 18 months.
Wow.
And that was there's a real huge thing for most people. And again, there are people who have other health issues, but for most people, if you I need to put this in the scientific terms. If you eat less and exercise more, you lose weight. For most people, it's not really complicated. It's literally calories in, calories out.
Right.
For most people. So anyway, that's what I did for 18 months, and I got down, but I just sort of gradually started to move back up. And at the start of the pandemic, when I realized that I wasn't going to be, I was like, okay. And also, Zoom is such a, for my mind, it's so hard. So anyway, long and short of it was, I'm a fiddler. I like to be active. So I started to walk and talk rather than just sit on Zoom all the time, nice. And eat less. And a Houston summer as well. Yep, and all of those things. And I said to Sandra when we were talking about this, I've always eaten my calories. I've never drunk my calories, because I just, if you're going to do that, I would much rather be putting a pie in my face. than a gin and tonic.
Me too.
So
thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah. Anyway, so that's the long and short of it. I lost about another 50 pounds to get back to about 220, and I've just started to ease back up. So I'm just going to try and take care of that before I come to Canada.
Gotcha.
I'm not going to do anything drastic like walk to Canada or anything.
Well, you know what? Toronto has some amazing food chefs. So take off as much as possible now, so you can gain a little bit when you get to Toronto.
I think the point is though that's all totally fine if we're not doing it all the time. This is what people I think get into these kind of horrible diet things, and I've got to where you need to do everything in moderation. And if you are genuinely living a healthy lifestyle and having a proper balanced diet most of the time, it's completely fine to go out and have a really nice, wonderful gourmet meal, twice a week. But you can't do it 5 times and then expect to just be going all the time with snacks.
And then why am I gaining weight?
So
right?
Yeah. Well, no. Why are my clothes still shrinking? People, come on.
Oh, you have to meet my husband.
No, I love it. I love the 80-20 rule. 80% you're on your what you need to do to make yourself feel great, and you're not hurting and you're moving and all that kind of stuff. And then 20% is the fun stuff. 20% is I love that, or whatever the percentage is that works for you. That to me is balance. I think we all need balance, because I don't really want to go to France and not be able to enjoy a croissant.
No, exactly. Yeah. So. But also I know some incredibly listen, health is also about how you feel and how you, as you say, some people need to be lighter in order to put less strain on their joints. I've always been very lucky on that, from that point of view. Even when I was at my biggest, I don't have many aches and pains, and I got called a what's the word, a very experienced arts administrator when the job got, which just means I'm old. But then you start to sort of go, how dare they? And then you go, actually, my first professional job was in 1983. So yeah, no, I'm old actually. That's genuinely, yep.
Yep. Okay. That's a hard one to accept, the day that you say, when as singers, especially, you're always the youngest in the room. And then all of a sudden you blink your eyes and one day you're the oldest in the room.
Yeah.
What happened?
And people start saying, oh, Sandra's a wonderful mentor. You're like, hang on, well, when did I become a mentor? I'm just coming out and doing my shit. And then suddenly I'm a mentor. No. So I again, in technical terms, I went up the ladder quite quickly. So and so I was suddenly like, people were like, oh, he's 30 something. I'm like, 25. And I just got there quickly. And then of course you suddenly become, oh no, he's about 35, and you're like, actually, I am 35. and then suddenly, you're just old, and the circle is done.
I'd like to know, just shifting a little bit, pivot. I hate that word.
Yeah.
So you have a new job, but how does that happen? Do you put the feelers out that, hey, it's time for me to move on, or do they approach you? How does this happen? Because this is a completely new world to me and to us.
Yeah, sure. Different places do different things. So sometimes obviously COC was known about for quite a long time, because Alexander had made his decision, and that became public, and so people knew that COC were looking, and I'm not sure they ever put an official job description and an advert out there. I think they employed a headhunter who then started phoning their list of people who they know are people who might be of interest to COC, but also might be interested in COC. And so that first call happened, quite a long time ago now. And at that point, I was in Houston, we were in a pandemic, and it was kind of like, no, why do these jobs always come at the wrong time? Right. And it is exactly that, because another company, which I don't need to say what it is, happened in the exact week we were moving into the George R. Brown Convention Center, having lost our fit to the flood. So we were literally doing 150-hour weeks, and I actually did an interview for this company with literally just a shirt and shorts. And I'm sitting there this much in camera, And that's it. I've underneath that, I've got my work boots on and my shorts and and I kind of take my hard hat off and I go, how are you? Nice to see you, stuff, and then go off and go back and get sworn out for being incompetent. So it's, but with COC, the journey was exactly that. And then you'd have a long list of 8-10 people or whatever, and the one thing I'll say, COC did a fantastic job of. The succession committee were really focused in what they wanted, and once it became clear that in-person interviews weren't going to happen in Toronto, they changed and moved to a different model. And I think their biggest concern by the end was, and then you get the call that is kind of the fun call, like, I think they're going to offer it to you. There's a phone call tomorrow morning, and you're like, yeah, we wouldn't be having this call if you didn't know that, but sure. And so that process was different. I think again, post-pandemic, we're going to be looking at some of these things. Is it continually flying half a dozen people in to meet staff and all of those things? Right. The one thing it does allow you to do is keep the process really, really quiet. There was no word in the industry at all about who it was, and I mean, saw very little speculation, because of course, if General Director A doesn't turn up and even do a quiet tour around the Four Seasons and be seen by two or three people. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story. So Anthony Freud, when he got the job in Houston, I actually got a call from somebody who, bizarre, an American guy who was the husband of a musician that I knew in the UK, a British musician. And she texted me to say, my husband's in Houston. He's just seen Anthony Freud in the corridors at Houston Grand Opera. ? So and Anthony at this point was on holiday in Barcelona. So I texted Anthony and said, knowing him really well, I texted him and said, hey, listen, Houston? You in Houston? And he came back like, how do you know that?
It's like, it goes all around the world, right?
And I mean, opera. It's like you can't break wind without someone knowing about it. And, it's like ridiculous. So anyway, it's so true. All in all, but COC kept the process really quiet, and I think they did a good job of that. And then of course I leave Houston, and so there Houston starts to look, and that becomes known, and that again they're using a headhunter, and it'll go through a similar process, I guess. But I think some of the jobs are, and this is one of the challenges we have as an industry, and just to get serious for a second, of when it is all done by word of mouth and hearsay and talking, the pool of candidates is small. The people who have experience of running large opera companies is relatively small. Okay, so you're going to ask those people first, or you're going to be taking a step up, a risk on someone stepping up. Right. And of course, this is where the aim for us and the desire for us to have a more diverse set of leadership within opera companies. How do we address that? Because ultimately, at this point in time, the training isn't getting. There's no formal training for being a general director. Right. I will bring a completely different set of skills to Alexander. I think I have some skills that Alexander doesn't have. He certainly has lots of skills that I don't have. So, but ultimately, we come from the same gene pool of white males who, had the luck or the privilege or whatever to be in situations where we're considered and promoted and given opportunities. Mm-hmm. So how do we open up that opportunity pipeline so that more people, from people of color, but also gender-wise, how do we build that? Because how do we stop it being? It's been proven now in politics, women are probably better politicians because they're less led by their own stubbornness. Mm-hmm. So they're much more open to conversation. Mm-hmm. But many women drop out of politics because of of the traditional looking after children and all of those things. If you don't look after children, then somehow something. All of those questions as we continue as a society, and this is not just an opera thing, it's a society about how we get a much better representation of the communities we are in our leadership structures.
Good. Well,
because we have to give up. Because if you don't build that from the bottom, then you don't get anywhere.
No, I totally agree with that. It's I'm happy that those opportunities are opening up and that they are happening, but you're right. Where does the training come from? Where does it start? Where
Yeah,
are those?
yeah.
Mhm.
There is no formal training, and if everything you do as as an administrator of color, let's say, is questioned more than your white equivalent, after a while, I mean, listen, I know how tough it is to get to where I got to with an enormous privilege behind me. At some point, you just go, this isn't worth it.
Yeah.
And just drift out. And it's, I mean, one of the things that we'll discover with hindsight in a few years' time, what did the pandemic do to the industry? Because it's, it'll unquestionably driven a whole load of singers who we will never see again.
Right.
Because they've had to find an alternative way of making a living.
Yeah. Thank you.
Administrators, people who got furloughed or laid off, had to retrain. Our stage managers is a good example. They haven't worked now for a year and a bit, most of them, and they're highly skilled, highly intelligent people at problem solving. Lots of industries need that, but they never. I'll never leave the industry. Yes, I'm paid awfully, and yes, I work late nights and weekends and stuff, but I love this. They've been forced out of it for a year at least.
Yeah.
So only the very dedicated will come back and go, so I'm earning the same amount of money for working for this party planner where I work 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, or whatever they've ended up having to do.
Yeah.
And we'll have lost some unbelievable talent through the pandemic, and there will be less companies, and so it's sort of easy to be, and it's not pessimistic, it's realistic. We need to be celebrating what a career in the arts can do. And when you start in the US right now, we're talking a lot about minimum wage, for instance, and people saying, oh, that would make burgers £400 if you went to McDonald's, if you make it. You're like, no, hang on a second. In the States where the minimum wage is $15, the burger is 14 cents more expensive. I think the vast majority of people would pay that 14 cents happily to know that the people who are doing, and again, and this is a naivety, but $15 an hour minimum wage times 40 hours, which is generally considered to be what people should be fit comfortable, is $31,000 a year. That's exactly. I mean, Sandra, your face says it all. I hadn't done that math before, but there was something that I saw that someone had done that math, and I'm like, I'm thinking, okay, that's sort of $45,000 a year, $15 an hour. Not at all. $31,500 a year, and by the time it takes, well, exactly. No. So even there's a question as to $15 in most states is a living wage anyway. Now in some, Houston is a cheaper city to live than Chicago or whatever, but whatever. Can you live on $31,500 in Chicago with a family?
No.
Or New York.
Yeah, or New York, or where? Yeah, San Francisco. So at that point, you're into a second job. 60 hours maybe gets you to just over 40, 43, 40. You're like, okay, there's something really wrong with this.
Yeah.
And it's not about giving people handouts. It's not about disincentivizing people. It's about valuing people, valuing your teams, your workforces, because ultimately they are the people who, the less glamorous side as well. If your venue isn't properly maintained and house kept, then people stop coming to your venue. People go, oh, that old venue got really old, it smells a bit, and the toilets aren't very clean, and so then people stop coming. And there are so many excuses to not come to a theatre. So anyway, all those things to say are that that there's a whole load of conversations about how we live as a society at being more equitable and fair, but opera clearly has to put its own house in order as well.
No, you make me think of there's a really great book called Nickel and Dimed that talks about minimum wage and what someone actually has to do to survive on 2 to 3 jobs. And that it even talked about like, how do you even get an apartment? Because normally you have to have first month's last, almost 3-month mortgage payments, and that there's no way that that's even possible on a minimum wage job, just one minimum wage job.
No. And this sort of rhetoric of, well, just need to get a better job then. Well, that all that rhetoric comes from people who probably have fallen into jobs through their own position they started in.
Right.
I don't know whether you've ever seen that. There's a video of 100 kids stood on a football field, goal line.
Yes.
And, if you've had this advantage, take a step forward, and you just watch how many of those kids are left behind.
An enormous amount. And I agree with you. When you look at the business, our business as a whole, if you lined up all of us on a football field and watched that walk down, what that's going to look like, and it's devastating, honestly. I mean, just even talking to singers that have been in the business for as long as, Sandra and I both have, looking at the future and saying, okay, what now? And like what you're saying, I mean, how do you even build a resume for a regular job when you've been on a stage for the last 15 years? It's insane. And trying to enter a job market where it's brutal. It's brutal to find.
Totally.
So can we talk about that, about your title in HGO and then your title at Canadian Opera Company? So I would like to know from you, what is going to be the difference between being the managing director of HGO to being the general director of the COC? Okay,
so let's go take a couple of steps back from that. Historically, the general manager / general director role. So obviously Peter's job at the Met is called general manager, but he's essentially the general director. And the European companies are, generally speaking, slightly different, with the intendant system, et cetera, et cetera. Right. But the Houston model of a general director, the office of the general director, with Anthony Freud, music director, reporting to Anthony, and then a executive director, and then what became a chief operations officer, which was me, and a chief advancement officer. So that's the structure which has a clear head to the pyramid. Houston decided when Anthony left that the best thing was, we had Patrick, who'd been here for many years as the music director, to give him more artistic responsibilities and me to continue to run the business. And honestly, that's a world that sort of works in the ballet world. It's more common in the ballet world. So that's what they did. I made my feelings really clear that at times that can lead to just some confusion about who's got the final decision. In Houston, we both reported to the board. They're changing structure now. They go to a general director position, and that's what they're advertising for right now. So they've changed the structure, and I think it's a better structure for opera companies generally. I think you need to know that at some point the buck stops with one person, and I think that's in terms of clarity of leadership for an organization. I think that there are very few places which work well with two people running the organization.
I agree with that. Somebody has to be responsible too, and
ultimately, as we all know, opera is a team game anyway. Yes, there has to be someone there at the end who goes, okay, I've listened to everybody, this is what we're doing. But ultimately, it's such a team game. Your senior staff group have to be the people who you empower to do their jobs. But they all have to be pulling in the same direction. And I think that's really important.
What's your goal at the COC? Do you have a plan in mind, or?
My plan is to physically get there is step one of the plan. At some point,
arrive in Canada. Get ready for the hotel stay.
It's like staying on one of those ocean liners where they say they've got they've got that horrible stomach gastroenteritis thing, but stay on there. No, I want to get off it. What are you talking about? Putting me in a hotel with other people who may have COVID. What the hell are you talking about? Well, hopefully, again, depending on what happens with the Canadian government, I may avoid all that because I've had my first shot in Texas. Hopefully within a few weeks I'll have my second shot and I'll be vaccinated. Awesome. I know, but it's Canada. Thing is, Canada needs to be cheering for America to go as quickly as possible, because once that has happened, more vaccine will become available. That's just again, that's
exactly. Send it up north, please.
Yep, come on, people.
Get it done. Listen. I'm going to solve the COC's budget issues by just bringing a crate of it with me when I come. I'm just like,
there you go.
Yeah, and sell it for a lot of money.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
No. I just the going rate. I'm not going to gouge anyone.
Okay.
I'm not that guy.
Okay.
Anyway, there was a question there some point ago.
Yeah.
Goal.
What's your goal with this year?
Yeah, listen, my goal is to build on Alexander's artistic excellence. I think that we can be bolder. I think we need to be very bullish about the future of opera. Opera is going to continue to evolve quickly now. You know, we've got forced into some change, and that none of us thought we could do. No one can work from home. That's ridiculous. It'll never work. Well, guess what? We had to, and it has worked. And yes, there are productivity things, and certainly with a performing arts organization, there'll be some tweaks to that model as to how to make it work better. But it's worked. And to build on that artistic excellence, but I think we need to be the opera company that really has an imprint in the community, the whole community of Toronto. When we're not just about doing opera downtown for a few people who ultimately have been unbelievable supporters of the opera pandemic. So you have to be careful how to not just go and change the direction massively quickly, but because that is ultimately the future of opera. Sorry, I had to just show you this. You can cut it out. So George, our dog, is not allowed up here.
George!
He decided to. So he's just woken up. So I'm in my son's bedroom because it's just the quietest place in the house and the best Wi-Fi. So, but yes, George has just woken up and he's not impressed. I'm being quite loud.
George, he's so sweet looking. Carrie has
So Sandra, this was when I started last week. This was all here waiting for me. So that's like a big thing of maple syrup.
I love that.
And the flag. Canada. So Carrie has a big Saint Bernard.
Yes, we did a rescue Saint Bernard in the pandemic, and he's my 170-pound baby who I love more than.
So when did you get him?
We got him in November.
Okay, so we got George in June, and he'd been on the street for a bit and then gone into rehab and stuff. But he's the most beautifully placid and I say, because my eldest is a wheelchair user, he's like, when we're out on walks, he's very like protective of her. I mean, it's just gorgeous.
I love that. No, yeah, we have it's a beautiful. He's 4, and now he has a brand new life, and he is spoiled rotten. Yeah. He loves every minute of it, and I really hope that when we can come back to the theaters, that I'm lucky enough to walk his big 170-pound butt into the opera house and be like, "Hey, everybody."
And with his goobers everywhere, you're gonna have him like
the
slobbering all over.
He'll be like some of the baritones you've sung with, Sandra.
It's true.
Hello. Yes.
Well, Carrie will tell you that sometimes I can be a bit of a spitter.
Classic COC Anna Bolena, Jane Seymour, massive woogie at Jane Seymour. And I'm trying to keep it together and not laugh during a very serious scene between the two of us. It was classic. I mean, just love.
The wings, I'm never going to live that down, Perryn. Never.
No.
Oh my God. Okay. I really want to ask you about.
Hang on. Karen, let me just finish that thought for a second. Okay. So Sandra, my goals, if you want to call them up.
Yeah.
I hope I've always left each company I've been to in a better state than it was before, either financially, organizationally, or just generally. I've never left a job where I thought, you know what, I made that company worse, or I didn't have that company. So, and I would love, I'm on a 5-year contract. Maybe after another contract, I would love to be able to hand over to an administrator of color, because I think that shows that we would have made some real impact over a period of time, because that's where the industry needs to evolve to, is having more voices at the table and everybody having an equal voice.
I love that. Love that so much. Okay, I really love the Texas Opera Alliance, and I listened to an interview that you did, and it made me curious about how you want to bring that to Canada and about connecting the opera companies. Are there initiatives that you started in Texas, like with the low ticket cost campaign? I'm not sure if I said that correctly, but and then the Texas Opera Alliance, are those things that, because they were so successful in Texas, do you want to try and incorporate that into Canada?
Listen, I need to be, respectful and listen to the other members of the Association of Canadian Opera Companies, obviously, and Christina Lowen does an amazing job of like bringing those people together. But the reality of it is that none of us are in competition with each other. We all have our own communities to represent and to speak to. But in real terms, people who like opera tend to like opera wherever they are. And what I would love to do is just get that feeling, as with Texas Opera Lines, of I would much rather make Austin stuff totally available, and co-partner with them, even if it's just promotional. And some of it will just be promotional.
Sure.
And I also know it's very difficult for. Having worked at English National Opera, which is the second company in London, and then worked at Welsh National, which is the national company of Wales, but is also sort of seen as a sort of bastard stepchild in some ways in the English funding system. But it doesn't. None of it really matters. That's politics. Keeping the opera community together and widening that group is about, there's wonderful work going on in Montreal, in Vancouver, in Calgary, in Winnipeg. We should be sharing all of that because, yes, especially in a time when physically people aren't going to go to those places to watch opera. Well, if there is digital output, if there's interesting, interesting community conversations, and COC hosted one about gender the other night. Why wouldn't someone in Calgary find that interesting? If you're interested in opera and gender issues within opera, why wouldn't you find that interesting? So why, this is not a competition. This is the rising tide floating all boats. So when it comes to specifics, that's who I am as a person. Our job as a national company is to support and help and nurture all the other companies in any way that we can. And so it's so easy for that to become a domineering thing, and that's when it doesn't work.
Okay.
HGO is the biggest company in Texas by quite a considerable amount. It doesn't help us. We're constantly trying to say that's fine, but we do work of all scales. So we can do a piece with two people and a string quartet in a found venue. That's very similar in size and scale to what Ashton's doing in Fort Worth for Fort Worth Opera, and Annie has an ambition to bring amazing new works to Austin. And Houston Grand Opera has a history of new works, so that we know we have a community of people who love that. Lauren's trying to establish something in San Antonio that's very different. Ian has different challenges to Houston because of so we all have our own different challenges. But the reality of it is, we've got to be stronger together. I mean, who ever heard of it getting weaker with the more people who have a voice at the table? So
you just got a big grant in Canada too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was so that. Okay, here's a fun story. So I was doing the town hall to meet the staff for the first time. First Monday of work. I'd met a few of them, but on Zoom. So there's 170 odd people on the call, and I literally had just said, I think I'm pretty approachable. I'm pretty down to earth, and if you need to say something, I'd much rather hear it. And my door's kind of always open, and you should feel free to reach out. It may take a couple of days or whatever, but anyway, at that point, I'm literally like this with this background behind me and everything, and my phone starts going as I'm trying to scan around 170 people, and it says Toronto, Canada phoning. So I held up my phone like this, and I'm going to say, when I said my door was always open, not now. I'm like right now I'm in the middle of something. So can you not call me from Toronto? Anyway, laugh, put the phone down. Anyway, it turned out it was the minister from of Ontario trying to give us a grant for $1.868 million. So next time I'll take that call.
Yeah.
Anyway, so at the end of the town hall, I listened to the message and I was like, oh my God. But actually, it was probably a good thing, because if I'd taken that call in the middle of it, then I would have definitely told people, and it was embargoed till the next day. So it was probably for the right order in many respects. But yeah, anyway, so that's what it. But that is, again, the Canadian government have responded to the pandemic in a different way to the American government, and these multiple trillion-dollar rescue packages for things are badly needed. And the PPP scheme certainly helped Houston Grand Opera through their thing. The Canadian way of doing it, where the arts were more generally speaking treated like just another business is probably more where we should be in society. This is not a luxury item. This is just how we change that conversation from it being, well, that's just a luxury, we can take that away. Yes, I get the difference between a nurse who saves lives physically and a musician who saves a life by allowing someone to have focus on the creative part of their brain. It's a different thing. I get that, but that's a conversation that we need to be having of having music, having storytelling, having creative art, be it performing arts, or be it visual arts, or be it people's lives get saved by finding something that they can center their life on. That's maybe it's for some people it's painting, for some people it's drawing, for some it doesn't matter. You'll find people on construction sites who write poetry. That's actually who they are. And yes, the job is something that they pay because they have a family or whatever to support, but who they are inside is accessed through that creative art. So those are the conversations, and again, it's so much easier to diagnose physical challenges than it is to look at mental challenges. But coming out of the pandemic, the big tail on the beast is the mental health of the world, because people are struggling.
It's huge. You talked about digital content. Do you think that digital content is going to be in our future forever in the opera world?
Unquestionably it is. And we need to get better at creating work for digital content. Okay. And it's another way of opening up. I'm old school. You can't beat having 2,000 people next to you in an auditorium and hearing that chord ring and everyone's hair goes off on the back of their neck. One of my favorite nights in Houston is the high school night, where kids come, they all get dressed up, but they don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea. So the reaction to Mimi kissing Rodolfo for the first time is a genuine reaction. There's no oh, this is where he kisses her, or this is where half the audience know what's coming. This is just a genuine reaction, and it's that's when you understand it just works. Again, the electricity. I was lucky enough to travel to New York with my son. The electricity that a group of people come and experience a piece of art together make, it's like nothing on earth. So that should I don't think ever will be replaced. But we have to be, as an art form, we have to understand that digital is very much part of our future, and how can we then creatively use it. And opera's been very creative about how it's used things, but the tradition that we're all used to of coming in, sitting down quietly, the audience, the orchestra tuning, house lights going down, everyone being silent, and then if anyone rustles anything, everyone's like, "I will kill you." That's relatively recent. The theatre used to be like, come in when you want, go out when you want. And I think coming out of the pandemic, some of that will be going back to some of that. Leave the house light. If you're a socially distanced audience, leave the house lights at a low level. Ask people to be courteous, but the restaurant, you don't need to try and get 500 people into a restaurant at an interval that you've predetermined. You need to just let people go to the restroom when they need to go. It's not that difficult, but it's about being respectful and not putting other people off and not ruining other people's enjoyment, etc., etc. But the idea that you have to have complete and utter silence I don't think is going to be there anymore.
Okay.
So going back to the COC and talking about going forward, that was a good freeze there. It's a red slug.
Perryn Leech is sponsored by Diet Coke.
So well, here you go.
That was our advert break.
There you go.
I've now seen the mug, Kerry. Oh God, that's fantastic.
Isn't that cute?
Yeah, that's really cute.
Thanks.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So we know that the next few seasons are already cast, and you're taking over. So the first season that you cast will probably be in 2 or 3 years. But do you have a type of music or a style of music or contemporary music or something that you feel is lacking at the COC, or that you're passionate about bringing to the COC, new commissions? Sure.
I think in general terms, I'm very much an everyman. So if Do you know Desert Island Discs, the program?
Oh,
You ever heard of Desert? Yeah, okay. So
Desert Island, they're the music that you want to hear when you're on a desert island.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. Took me a second. Okay.
So, so mine would go from the Clash at one end through to wherever. So I'm a very much an everyman. You know, the first couple of records I bought, one was by the Clash and one was by ABBA. So I'm very much an everyman in terms of both, you know, my musical style and stuff. My mum was into musical theatre, so that was an influence early on. Before I didn't hear an opera until I was, you know, at drama school. I didn't listen to an opera because it was in our house it was all musical theatre. My mum was a huge Andrew Lloyd Webber fan. So as I said, you know, we had no musical taste, but we had musical theatre. But actually, you know what? When you look back on some of the early Lloyd Webber works, what he was brilliant at, and I'm sorry I'm digressing again, but what he was brilliant at was he understood marketing, was not marketing yourself as a musical. So I remember Evita had 5 singles in the singles charts released, you know, bit by bit, and they were fantastic tunes, and it was telling a story. And then you wanted to know more about the story of Evita. You wanted to find out more about it, and you know, Lin-Manuel is rightly lauded for Hamilton, but this was a similar thing. This was someone who we'd not come across in our history readings. Yes, we knew about the regime in Argentina. We knew about the Eva Perón, but I learned more about that story because I saw the musical and then went and researched it. And no one had heard of Alexander Hamilton 3 years ago. Yes, but it's true, isn't it? Right. You'd heard of some of the other, you know, George Washington, of course, but you hadn't. So that's how that could go. So going back to the actual question, Sandra, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So yes, absolutely. I think we need to look at broadening the repertoire as much as possible. It should have all of those things in it. So, you know, I talk about a balanced diet. You've got to have your bohèmes, your butterflies, etc., because those are the tunes that people know, and that's how you build a business model that is terribly broken but sort of works. But you also then need to have, you know, the German masterworks, because otherwise people don't see that full canon, and if you don't do them, then your orchestra can't play them when you want to do them. But you also have to have new stories that are resonant with your community, and you also need to be being slightly less snobby about, you know, well, that's not an opera. Well, I think in 100 years' time, people are going to look back and say, well, that was clearly that next evolution of an opera, whether it was seen as thing. So all of those to say is, actually, bizarrely, because of the pandemic, there is much more flexibility in the next couple of years than there might have been. So there are a whole series of projects which were cancelled, you know, a year ago now, that have been pushed forward, and some of those, of course, have casts attached to them. But we've already changed one of those to a different title, just because, you know, there has to be flexibility, and you know, it's horrible having a conversation about flexibility with singers, you know, again and again, because, you know, you're looking at going, I had 9 contracts, and I got 6 of those contracts are being cancelled. I've got 3 left, and the other 3 are being pushed further out into the future or whatever. But, you know, we have to build a case for coming back to doing what we can do realistically. And, you know, we were scheduled to open our full rep with Aida. I mean, anyone can see that doing Aida in this fall is not going to work very well. So we're looking at what we can do to do that, how we can use those artists in different ways, how some of them can move into different roles, etc., etc. So all of those things is to say that I think that it will quickly become clear that I think we can continue to diversify our repertoire to the stage where I hope there's something there for everybody on all scales. So, you know, again, I want to try and break down this 6 main stage operas. We do work of many scales at COC, and we're doing them in venues that are appropriate for whatever that project might be. So yeah, of course, there's going to be a lot of opera going on in the Four Seasons Centre, but some of the new work is not best suited to being in the Four Seasons Centre. It's more tailored to other spaces and spaces in your community. So if I'm telling the story of your community, I'm not going to drag you to a different community to tell that story. I'm going to collaborate and create a project with you, and I'm going to ask you where you normally would go and gather as a community to see storytelling happening.
I love that. That's cool.
Yeah. Big names, big directors still. Do you want?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're a world-class company, and we are on the world stage as an organization that is seen as a very major player. So of course that is part of it, but it's a part of it. And I think that most successful organizations do have the ability to use that standing, that name. We're essentially the Canadian National Opera. But we want to be absolutely inclusive to all the other companies in Canada, and also all the artists who have voices. We want to try and build something that's greater than just being a company with a fantastic venue in downtown Toronto doing it to a few people. But yeah.
Yay. Well, we will be your biggest cheerleaders.
Yeah, for
Carrie's
sure.
actually sung there more than I have.
Really?
I love it there. Yeah, I love it's just, I don't know, it just always felt like family. The team that was there, from the stage management to costumes to makeup to everybody, it just, when I went back there, it was like I'd never left. And those are the opera houses that you are more loyal to, because when you go, you don't feel like you're away from home, even though you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Listen, I had a singer a couple of years ago who sung a lot of stuff in another company. I'm not going to say who it is, but they said the same thing about Houston. They said, the person who runs that company, I see them maybe once or twice during the entire 6 weeks I'm there. He said, "You're here all the time, Perryn. I see you. You hug me. In the days when we were allowed to hug, you hug me and welcome me back to the company." I'm like, because that's who I am as a person. That's the environment I want to create with people, is where we don't let nonsense get in the way.
Right.
This is about creating good work, and people tend to work better if they're happy and enjoying it and feel that they can express themselves.
Yeah.
And yes, so, some of the conversations we've had over the last 3 or 4 years about the appropriate way to express yourself and to make people not feel threatened or intimidated or even uncomfortable. Again, our conversations that needed to happen in the industry for a long, long time. And again, we forget we haven't solved that. We'll never solve that, because there will always be people who let themselves down with behavior. But in real terms, the conversations now are there. If someone is generally making people feel uncomfortable, I think those power dynamics are starting to be broken down to the stage where people go, no, enough's enough. I need to go and have this conversation with somebody.
Yay, I love that.
Wow.
I have to say, this is like total randomness, but when you were talking about Andrew Lloyd Webber, as a kid in marching band who got to march in the Macy's Day Parade, we were taken to the Phantom of the Opera, and I'd never seen anything like that before. And when Masquerade happened, I was like, I want to do that. How do I sing and wear a big costume like that? I want to know. And then in came opera.
But Carrie, isn't that the point though? Yeah, but isn't that the point? The reality of it is that it doesn't matter which art form you end up loving. The kids coming in to watch Nutcracker, that's fantastic.
Yes.
They're getting used to going to see the performance in a theatre. Listen, I'm a ridiculous sportsman. I love everything. My wife says that I would watch Albanian tractoring for in the middle of the night if I could. But I took my kids to play every sport, and I knew Kirsty, my daughter, the twins. I knew Kirsty, had this competitive drive about her, and I knew that sport was a good way of channeling some of that. And so, soccer, didn't like it very much. Baseball, well, just a poor man's cricket. And we worked through. Oh, come on now.
That was brilliant. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yep. Okay. Yes.
NFL just for people who can't play rugby. All of those things. Anyway, all of those things to say that then she finally found volleyball. And I don't know whether you know, but women's volleyball is massive. I mean, utterly massive. Yeah. So for 3 or 4 years when she was playing high level volleyball, there were 5 out of state tournaments. We went to Hawaii, St. Louis, Orlando every year, and the tournament in Orlando is worth $70 million to the local economy. That's how big it is. Kirsty found the sport for her was volleyball. She went and played it. She's now, at college, she's playing club volleyball because, again, she knows it's not going to lead to a career. So she's very smart. So she just went, I'll play at club level rather than at varsity level. She plays flag football. I wish she'd played rugby because she's badass. She's amazing, and she'd be so good at rugby. She doesn't really care if she hurts people.
I love this. So, I want to meet her.
Yeah,
yes, we have to meet her when you're back in Canada.
For real. And so she's now studying political science and wants to be a human rights lawyer. So she's we're proud of all three of them.
Cool. Wow.
She's a driven young lady.
Love it. Okay, go ahead.
Anything else you want to tell our public out there, our audience, that anything they need to know about you? Because this really is a big introduction to our viewers.
About you.
Yeah. Well, I think they'll have picked up that from the interview. Listen, I as I said, I'm very different to Alexander, and I think that should be celebrated. I think that different people bring different things to organizations, and I think that Alexander's an amazing man. I've watched his career with great pride because he's great at what he does. I hope I can have some of his success in Canada. But in real terms, opera is a team game. It's about the people getting people rolling in the right direction. And that's where I would love to see CFC 5 years time, looking back with some hindsight. It's like we got some momentum going. We came out of COVID not defensive about the industry. Mm-hmm. We need if we don't get to sing about the industry and we don't get to talk about it in a positive way, then who is going to? Because it's easy to snip and go, well, they're overpaid this, they're overpaid that. They should. All of you need to just hush down, because in real terms, this is an industry that's been here for a long time. It has absolutely some evolution to continue to do. Some of that change will be hard. We know that, both from a business perspective, from a representational perspective. Some of that work is going to be really hard, but we have an opportunity. We've had change forced on us.
Yeah.
How we react to that change shows whether we're the right people to be running organizations and managing organizations. And those organizations will come out of it with new identities, will be the ones that I think are successful. And I think CSC is in a great position to do that.
Thank you. Those are great parting words. And if you have 5 more minutes.
Sure, absolutely.
You want to ask me some cheeky questions.
Rapid fire. No okay.
All right. Who wants to start? Carrie?
Okay. You go.
First question. Since for George, who's just woken up. When you did that high note, he's like, what the hell's going on?
No, when I practice or warm up, Humphrey freaks out. He's like, what's happening? What's wrong with you, Mom? Are you okay? Is everything okay? What's happening?
Yeah.
And let me lick you and get my slobber all over you.
Everywhere.
Okay. Best piece of advice you were ever given?
I'm going to slightly not answer that question, but there's a famous story from me at drama school in which at the end of my first term, I was the person who had just been to have her end of year review or end of term review came out in tears and said that it had been awful and they'd pulled her apart and just destroyed her basically. And so I gave her a hug and they called me in, and mine was completely different. Mine was, I felt very positive and everything. And they said, right at the end, he said to me, there is one thing I'd say, you don't always take criticism very well. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, and sort of bit it down what I actually wanted to say, which was something that you said about a couple of minutes ago. And anyway, I walked out, and the person who was next in for me said, how did it go? And I said, the motherfucker said I couldn't take criticism. Which kind of became a bit of a legend for a while because it sort of, obviously proved the point slightly. Anyway, best piece of advice. I think it's about just keeping going, and ultimately understanding your own actions impact on other people. So you choose to be a good colleague or a bad colleague. Ultimately, is where it comes down to, and I try to think of that as often as I possibly can.
Okay. What talent would you love to have?
Well, obviously, I'd love to be an international level sportsman of any sort.
Okay.
What piece of opera or classical music would you recommend to people for their first time? Like if you're new to it.
Yeah. I think that there's a reason why the popular operas are popular, and we all know people who came to see Duke Bluebeard's Castle as their first opera were hooked forevermore. But in real terms, there is a reason those sort of half dozen 8 titles are so popular. And I actually was listening to Tosca the other day, just in the background of something, and I was like, this is just unbelievable, because it's like this long, and it does, and yet as my tastes have changed, but I think there's a real reason why those popular operas are popular. They have a lot of good stuff, good tunes within them, but it you can't tell people what to like, but they will find it.
Yeah,
but
true.
I think the popular operas are popular for a reason.
What's your guilty pleasure?
I don't feel guilty about pleasure, really. I think it's something that you should have within moderation. Again, what you think is you should have. So I don't think guilt should be attached to pleasure. I think you should enjoy pleasure, because if you're gonna experience the other side of the equation, that means you have to feel guilt about that as well. And life happens, and in real terms, I don't think you should feel guilt about pleasure.
Love it. Love that.
Most precious thing that you own?
I mean, health is ultimately it. My health is ultimately it, because I've always been healthy, and that's allowed me to do all the things that I've wanted to do in a way that I know, having a disabled daughter, I know how much of a gift that is.
What job would you love to do other than your own?
Sports journalist. If I wasn't a sportsman myself, I'd love to be a sports journalist.
Cool.
I'd love to talk about sport, write about sport, whatever. But I mean, again, that was formed when I had, again, leaving school. I had those 2 career options of going to theatre or going to sports journalism. My English wasn't really good enough to do that, and all of that. So that's ended up going down the theatre route. But I already, again, I'm very pragmatic. I'd already had the rational process in my head of like, you're not physically built to be a world-class international athlete.
Okay, this is not a question, just a comment. I cannot believe that you have survived in Texas for this long after a comment about rugby versus American football.
I will listen. If you have to wear pads because you're not hard enough to play the sport, then that's your call.
You realize you're saying this, and you live in Texas. Like, Texas is football.
But that's because they just need explaining to them that watch a sport in which people actually physically put themselves on the line, because the thing is with American football is that they all have to wear pads and helmets because they're all wearing pads and helmets. So they do things which your body is not supposed to do, and put their bodies online in a different way. But they're protecting it because they know that helmet's going to hit them on the shoulder and it'll shatter their shoulder, so they have to wear shoulder pads. Go and watch a game of rugby, which goes on incessantly for 80 minutes. We don't have advert breaks every 9 seconds. And listen, I love football, American football, and I love college football. It's not that I don't like it as a sport, but it's so clearly not a sport that is set up in the same way that sports are not meant to be stopped and have a break every 9 seconds. That's just not what sport is.
Right.
It's meant to have it's like a show. If every time you came on and sang an aria, and then you went, you finished your aria, and then you went off to go, Dorothy drinks Diet Coke. You wouldn't regard that as an opera performance. You regard that as an infomercial.
I agree with you. And rugby is really great. It is.
How easy would our jobs be if we got to go off and like, have a smoke, a shot of vodka, and then come back on? That'd be amazing.
It would be much more lucrative, clearly.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Most embarrassing dad moment.
Most embarrassing dad moment. Oh, that's interesting. I completely acknowledge that I've been spoken to at volleyball tournaments for over aggressive cheerleading on many occasions.
I love that.
Favorite curse word in any language?
Cockwomble.
Wait. You have to say that again because the internet went out. You have to say that one more time.
Cockwomble.
Cockwomble.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay, I get the first part of that word. What's the second part?
oh, yeah, you wouldn't even know what a womble is. Fuck trumpets is good. Oh, he's a fuck trumpet.
Oh, the British swear words are so great.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's such a lexicon there, and you find yourself using them in language. So, yeah, bell end is a good one because it's just a bell end, which is the end of the gentleman's attack. Yeah, all of that stuff. But yeah. Okay. I'm going to tell you about my favorite. I'm going to tell you my favorite tweet. I'm going to say the word that begins with C, and it's a word I don't like to say, but it's a fantastic tweet of a man saying you've never really truly experienced a night out in Glasgow until you've experienced somebody pushing a broom at a hairbrush that dropped on the subway. So someone dropped a hairbrush on the subway. And this guy's pressing at the broom, going, "Come at me, you jabby wee C word." He's having a fight with a hairbrush that's been dropped by someone on the floor.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
All right, Carrie,
last question. If heaven exists, what do you want to hear God say as you walk through the pearly gates?
If heaven exists, I'm not going that direction, I suspect. I want him to say that you left some sort of imprint on the world.
Cool.
Beautiful. Okay. Thank you so much, really,
of course,
giving us your time, and
yes,
we both got to get to know you a lot better. And
yeah,
yeah.
Oh,
good and bad.
I think it's great that people see the human side of all of us, and
absolutely.
And that's what we really try to do, is to show the human side of opera and our business, and
right.
you right into it. I mean,
well, you guys have such an amazing chemistry because it's just clear you're just great mates. I mean,
yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
Glad you weren't there when we did the Rusalka and the Anna Bolena. It was a heck of a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We'll do it again.
Yep. We'll do it again. Look forward to seeing you in person soon.
I know. I hope so too. And really, just congratulations on the new job. We are all so excited for you and so excited for the future of COC, a company, like we said, that we both love so much. So this was a pleasure. I'm so glad that we had this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Great stuff.
Take care.